Welcome to That Pennsylvania Witch podcast. My name is Katelyn Dawn. Thanks for joining us today. Hello, thanks for tuning into That Pennsylvania Witch podcast. Today I have the honor and the privilege to interview Ness Bosch. Ness is an Iberian shamaness and priestess. She's an author, an independent researcher, a mother of three, and she lives in Scotland where she's a founding member of the goddess community. She's the founder of the Path of the Bones and the clan of the Bone Woman, La Huesera. She's the head of the Covenant of the Waters and the Temple of Astarte. Before moving to Scotland, Ness was a regional coordinator for the Pagan Federation International in Spain. She's a Hierophant, priestess, Dame Commander, and the Archdruidess of the Fellowship of Isis. I'm so excited to have you on today. Hello, Ness. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. I've been reading your wonderful book, Sacred Bones, Magic Bones, Stories from the Path of the Bones. Can you tell me a little bit about your book?
Well, my book is basically a work of love. And, I've been following this path of the bones, this path to my, to the ancestors and the path of the bones in that sense is universal, right? Because we all have bones, we all have ancestors, and we can relate to them through our bones. And what I wanted to do in this book was to literally just say to the world, listen, we are linked through our bones. We are linked as human beings. We are linked to everything through our bones. And I just, out of love, I just wanted to kind of put out there like those connections, and try to make people think, and to try to also when people think about bones, it tends to be like, oh, they think it's creepy, but they don't connect with the fact that if they're walking, it's because they have bones that are holding them and allowing them to walk. So I wanted to kind of just try to say bones are not creepy, they're part of us, and this is my book.
It's a wonderful analogy for the root of who we are and for our connection to our ancestors. I truly enjoyed your book. Thank you so much for telling me about that. Ness, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, I think I am who I am because I had a very unique upbringing, I think. My dad was into the occult and mythology and all that. And he was also a Marine, a scuba diver, an army scuba diver. And so I was, as you can imagine, I was literally scuba diving before I was 5.
That's amazing.
And, then my granddad, he was a goalkeeper in the mountains. So I used to spend a lot of weekends going to the mountains and literally just diving into the landscape, because obviously if your granddad spends his whole day roaming in the mountains, you do the same. You follow him and you go with him, and the goats, and then you go on your own. And yeah, so I had a very animistic upbringing in relationship to the waters around me, to the landscape that was around me, that was absolutely amazing. So influenced because of my dad's tales, because he used to tell us stories from mythology all the time. So I grew up knowing the gods and kind of relating to them, and they become part of my path as a small child. So I guess that's what kind of shaped me at the very beginning.
That's amazing. I grew up I was adopted, but I was always intrinsically drawn to all things animism myself. So I kind of went off on that path by myself. It's incredible that you had kind of an immersion experience from a young age. That's beautiful. What a great story. I love that. Thank you. One thing that kept coming to mind when you were talking is you said that some people think bones are creepy. I am constantly made fun of because I have bones everywhere. I have a beautiful cleaned and preserved deer skull on my outside altar. I have other ones too, and I think that you're right. They're beautiful and they tell a story. I've
Yeah.
also been very drawn to archaeology and anthropology, and they give us so much information about the people, about where they
Yeah.
lived, what they ate, their health, they tell so much more of a story than most people realize.
That's why it was very important for me in my book to make that clear that bones literally tell the story of who we are. And to me, those bones are one of the bases of human spirituality, relating to the cult of the ancestors, and but as you said, bones literally they don't shut up. They say so much. Not only we can learn about ancient cultures, and who we were in the past, if we go like really really far, but also they keep telling stories. Like in my book I do mention a bit about the Spanish Civil War and how we can, we find bones of those that were killed during the Spanish Civil War, and they tell the story of, that story of hate. It's a terrible story, and it's quite recent. So bones doesn't matter, the time period, they where in history, they keep telling stories.
Yes, yes. I also love how you mentioned the Kalyak. I just did an entire service about her at our local UU just this past Sunday. And she is just one of my favorite deities. You mentioned that you had a theory that the story of the bones that she collects every year was only just a filter. So it was only
Mhm.
part of that. I agree. I don't remember where I read it, and you'll have to tell me if you've ever read this, but collects bones, but then she kind of in her own way honors them. So I did read that somewhere in some old archaic book. I don't remember which one. When I remember it, I'll send it to you. But yeah, I think,
She is, to me, she is the oldest deity that roams like Europe, but obviously she transpassed, the Europe, and she traveled with the people wherever they go. But she is the oldest goddess we have in Europe under different names. So she is a goddess to respect. And if you work with her, you need to be aware that as a goddess that is so old, obviously she's going to be related to bones. Yes or yes.
sure. In my experience, she's also kind of tough.
Oh,
She's
she
not
is
a,
tough.
she, she's in her own way loving and, of course, wonderful and powerful and beneficial, but also tough. If you want some tough love, that's something that that comes naturally.
But how come she wouldn't be tough?
Yeah,
She is the personification of winter itself. Okay?
absolutely.
And excuse me, but winter can be deadly.
Oh, yes, especially for our ancestors.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
if a deity personifies as such, the winter season, death is it's a very important part of the winter seasons because everything dies or sort of dies in winter. You know, the light dies until it's reborn. You know, the plants kind of, they go to sleep, to hibernation. Animals go to hibernation. We as humans, we feel this darkness, and we also die a bit every winter. And obviously sickness during the winter kills you, or older people tend to die during the winter because the climatology is harder. So yeah, she's death. She is tough,
Yeah.
but she's also a creation goddess. She also creates. So, she's there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I always think of, yeah, I don't know if you're a gardener, but I always think of how some seeds, they need to be cold stratified over the winter. So they need to sit in the cold and in the dark. And if they don't, they either do not sprout or they're not prolific at all because the cycles are so necessary. And every part of the cycle is to be honored and is necessary, especially in animism.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I really liked you jumped right away in this marvelous book about caves and
Oh, yeah.
all of the find you also I could tell you also liked caves and I also wanted to say like
I love caves.
oh they're so great, aren't they?
I know they're fantastic. I was writing because I'm writing another book in the form of a blog for Moon Books about an Iberian goddess. And the last bit I was writing, I was actually talking about caves and sanctuaries in Iberia, and how, I relate that goddess to caves. She's the goddess of the goats, of the goat keepers, of the goat herders. But if you are in the mountains and you're a goat keeper and you need a refuge, you go to the caves. The caves is so you might even find water inside of the cave for your animals and for yourself. So caves are very important. So to me, it's not a surprise that we will find sanctuaries as such inside of caves. And obviously, as part of my personal story, um, my granddad, my grandma, they lived in a cave when they were just married. But in Iberia, especially in southern Iberia, you can find caves. They are absolutely amazing. They're like houses inside. And I know
Yeah.
when they were just married, they lived in a cave. And my parents, listen to this, met in a cave.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
It was in Menorca. It used to be, it's still there. Is this cave, and in the 70s, they turned that cave into a nightclub.
That's an incredible thing to do, especially in the 70s.
I know. And
How
so my
fun.
parents met in this cave. So
Yeah.
I
Yes.
am a cave woman
In a
in a way.
sense, hey, me too then. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains and I kind of connected to the mountains
Yes.
in Scotland, and at least
Yes.
at one time they were, and the
Yeah.
energy's still there. But I was always lamenting that because of where I lived in the Appalachian Mountains, we didn't have caves. But there were outcroppings and shelters and that sort of thing. But caves are my favorite thing to visit. And I love the archaeological sites that we've been able to find in caves. And I agree. I think humans we've always been drawn to them.
Yeah. And in the southern Iberia, I have run a kind of a vision quest for people, and I have taken some of those people into caves to actually do their vision quest, and it has been amazing for them.
Oh, I bet. Some of the older druidic nations or groves their initiations are done in caves, and it's
Yeah.
very symbolic and it's very old. And I would imagine that many, many other pagans do that too.
In the ancient Mediterranean, caves were very significant in religion, different religions or cults, let's call them cults,
Mhm.
will use caves. Or caves will be essential for the rituals, for the initiations, for that seeking of visions. Or maybe the visionary was inside of a cave, inside of a cave, like in Delphi, or La Sibylla, the famous Sibylla, would be in a cave also, to deliver her oracles. So cave have been super significant, for human spirituality. So, and they have been used like for millions of years. I mean, nothing says more than that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you can tell. Anybody who's ever been exploring and happened upon a cave, they are magical. Here in the northeast region of the United States, there are a lot of mines, and it's kind of a bummer that they're just not naturally occurring caves, but they're still very intense because you feel like you're just within the heart of the mountain.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
But you need to think, okay, so mining obviously is a different story
Oh yeah.
because mines are open to source something from Mother Earth. But I'm sure you can count quickly with your hands the number of animals that actually dig a hole into the ground. And they're not natural holes, they made them.
Yep. Yep.
So although mines were firstly used as a source, to extract things, we can still honor that that place. We can still honor that access to the underworld, to the realms below. We can still honor that. We can still be respectful and honor the spirits that live under. So there's
Oh,
still we can
absolutely.
still do something nice.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I agree. Well, I've, like I said, I've really been enjoying this book. And
I'm so glad.
yeah,
When I was writing my book, I was like, who's going to read this?
oh my gosh, I think everybody should read it. You even talk about, which of course shells are bones too, and now it makes sense now that I know that you were doing a lot of scuba diving and that sort of thing. But creating things out of shells and bones, that has been something that we've been doing as a species for a very long time.
Yeah, since forever.
Absolutely.
Even I talk about the folklore of teeth in the book as well, if you remember.
Yes.
And you can actually find like a small cradle bags for babies from the Neolithic, or they are decorated with bones of different animals and teeth, you know. And if you think about it, it's a great amulet, a tooth, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
We use a tooth is a fantastic amulet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything can be a religious relic.
Yes. Yeah. When I'm doing shamanic work, everything I have around me becomes a tool. I can use a sharp bone to do a very deep extraction work on someone. I can use the tooth of a tiger, as you said. If I want to dig into something, I can use a tooth, and dig into the person's soul if I want to extract something I found. And yeah, when I say anything, I remember once I was doing a really deep extraction work because the extraction work I do is quite special and it goes like super deep. I literally teach people to open the people's soul and just go inside. So it is super intense. And I remember I was doing an extraction work and my crystal at that time was super heavy already, full of things I was finding, and I was clearing and taking out. And I was like, okay, I want to take a bit more if I can, but my crystal is exhausted. And I just looked around and I saw this magic wand. It was with a 5 point star. I just look at it and I just went, I'm gonna use that.
There we go.
And I just took it and I just finished the job, closed the wound, and I finished the job with a toy wand, you know. It was not plastic. It was, but still, you know, it was.
Yeah.
We can literally use anything.
We use what's available, and that is absolutely what our ancestors would have done. If we're out and we're going on a meditative walk, or if we're going on a journey, we use the plants around us. We use tree limbs,
Yeah.
stones. You know, I grew up using sedimentary stones for meditation and for journeying, and that's part of my practice now. And, you know, I didn't have where I grew up and when I grew up, I didn't have access to crystals and that sort of thing. Maybe some fossils, maybe things like that, for
Yeah.
education purposes. And of course, you could use those too. But yeah, that's amazing. And I was also going to say, I really appreciated in your book how you had a section where you can find the best fossils in the
Yes.
British Isles. I of course, documented all of those because on my next trip, I intend on visiting a few of those.
Oh, fantastic. No,
Yeah.
it's, fossils are bones,
Yep.
they are. And for me, it was like, okay, I cannot not talk about fossils because also when my granddad used to be in the mountains in Granada, in the Sierra de Almijara and Tejeda, just walk over for a walk, lift a stone, okay? And it will be like this immense oyster in your hands, okay? And I literally, that's what I used to do. I used to go to the mountains, roaming on my own, finding fossils. So I had to mention fossils. I'm very lucky because also the geology of those sierras, you can actually find also quartz. You can just find quartz, like easy to find, and calcite and different minerals. And it's just a very rich area. So I was lucky because I could find those in nature too.
Yeah. Quartz is very abundant where I grew up. And I moved since then, not far, but it's not nearly as abundant where we're at here because we moved away from the mountain range and closer into like the into the valley. So it's not as abundant here. I would imagine deeper, if we would dig deeper, it would be. But there is a state park locally that I like to go to, and for fossils, not because they're abundant, but there's a specific fossil, Scalithus linearis,
Okay.
which is found in, and if anybody local in Pennsylvania is listening, it's at Pine Grove Furnace State Park. You can find these fossils there, and the reason why it's so special that you can find them there is because that is part of the reason why scientists and archaeologists were able to link that the Appalachian Mountains and, well, this continent and the African continent used to be connected. And that's because they were able to match up those fossils. It's this
Fantastic.
long, like worm thing, and I'm sure that every
So you
science
see,
teacher.
that's another story they're telling.
Yes, yes, they're so amazing. So I also like fossil hunting and that sort of thing. So, and then of course, I spoke to you a few weeks ago and told you I was going to Denmark. And as I'm reading your book in Denmark, like a quarter of the way through it, you start to talk about Denmark and so I
Yes.
don't know. It's very wonderful. And it was a very timely book for me. You talk about the bones of the gods too,
Yes.
which was fascinating. You talked about how Crete became a Phoenician colony, and then, of course, Carthage and other. And of course, there's some not wonderful stories about sacrifice, but at that time, I'm not being ethnocentric because that was everybody's practice. That was
Yes.
so intrinsically wound within the practices of ancient peoples. So it is part of their history.
Yeah. And it's history we cannot deny. But on the other hand, I will say that you know how Romans give everyone bad propaganda
Yes,
because
yes.
they were like the civilized ones. So they used to say that the people from Carthago used to kill their children, right? In sacrifice and all that. And actually, recently, it has been kind of rediscovered that it was actually not a place for child sacrifice, but because of the high level of child mortality, they had that place to actually bury their children.
Yeah.
And so they were not killing them. It's not what the Romans said.
Yes, those pesky Romans
I know, I know, I
often
know.
painted anything unique as malicious, but
Yeah.
yeah, I have to read that through a lens and just remember that history was written by the victors.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And we have so many filters to peel
yes.
from the information we find.
So you talk about a lot of deities, and some of them, of course, I had to research. Of course, I knew Hel, Hol, or Baba Yaga, because of course that is part of the Dark Goddess archetype. And we were talking about the Kaliak too, because I believe that they're all interpretations of one another. And like you said, they traveled with the people. And so they
Yeah.
changed based off of where they lived, where they settled. The gods literally walked along the Silk Trail and
Yeah.
then changed. And I think
Yeah.
that that's really beautiful too.
Yeah. And you can tell that I have a soft spot for Baba Yaga. If you notice the length of my entry of Baba
Yeah,
Yaga.
I do too. Again, as I'm reading your book, your personality really comes through. And I kept thinking, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get along with Ness. But yeah, I really enjoy your entry on Baba Yaga as well. Because you reference her several times. You're in many different groups. You've founded several groups. I'm assuming that you use bones in your modern practice, your shamanistic practice.
Yes. Yes. Obviously, um, I call my path the path of the bones
Yes.
because ultimately, at one point, La Huesera, the spirit of the bone woman, kind of made me look into myself and find my own path through my bones and the ancestors. And the funny thing is, sometimes people struggle to find their path, you know, or to fit in a path or to fit in a group. And when the reality is that the path of the bones is for anyone to follow, for everyone to follow, because it's so universal and the practices are so universal that literally anyone can follow this path and their bones to their own history, their own self, and I think is very, very important.
Yes, it's beautiful. And so you're very busy.
I am busy. Yeah.
You are a mother of three, an
Yes.
author, a priestess, a shamaness, and you currently live in Scotland, and I'm absurdly jealous. I've actually been trying to visit myself again because it's just absolutely gorgeous there. But you're a founding member of the goddess community in Scotland.
Yes. So it all started, when I was in Spain, in Iberia. I founded a goddess temple there. And so when I moved here, and then I realized it was no kind of goddess community as such. I started with the foundations, I wanted to found a personal temple. So I founded the Ascota Goddess Temple, because of Ascota, the princess that was the mother of the Ascoti that founded Scotland. And then that kind of evolved to the goddess community of Scotland to have the support of beautiful local pagans, elders, and we come together. And what we do with the goddess community of Scotland, we try to provide sacred space for people. We run ceremonies for people to come along and just enjoy a ceremony. We do offerings. So what we do is we hold regular offerings to honor the local deities. So we go to the landscape, we go to rivers, or we go to hills or lochs, and we honor the local spirits. There are a lot of moods in the UK, loads of moods, and they go to the moods, they meet in pubs, and they have a great time. But what I noticed it was this huge gap where no one was actually providing sacred space, like
Yes,
outside
like
of.
ritual, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yes. And something as simple as an offering where you can come with your family. I got children. We do regular offerings, to the local river. And I wanted to provide that for local pagans, like a safe space, doing a very light ritual that anyone can join, and you don't have to worry about, this or that, because it's literally just making an offering, and you can come with your mom, or you can come with your children, and it's safe, you know.
yeah,
So that's what we do. We gather certain days along the year. Like we went on the 1st of February. We were in Dumfries, which is a Scottish town close to the borders. We did an offering to the local river there, but also I held a blessing ceremony for some people of the community for the child that was born on the 1st of February. So I'm just doing what a priestess is supposed to do,
yeah, yeah.
holding space.
That's so important. I can't tell you how much that resonates with me because it seems like something that should be happening naturally. It seems like people who practice earth-centered or animistic or pagan traditions should be meeting outside or at least in space together where they're having a simple ritual, they're honoring the land spirits or their ancestors together. And I think that we've gotten so swept up in the academics, which I am an academic, I am a nerd. So there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that.
No, I'm a nerd too. Yes, nothing wrong with that. But when, there are so many moods going on. I try to go to moods, but because I also had a small children, it was not the place you want to be. You don't want to be in a pub with children.
Right.
It's not the place. I don't want to meet my fellow pagans for the drink and just that. I'd love to do that, but I want to do more. And I
Yeah.
want to provide more. And I want the youngest of the community to see that they can also go with the parents and do an offering, and it's beautiful and it's completely safe to connect them to the landscape, what is around them, and to connect them to the parents as well, and to be able to share something as beautiful, although simple, as an offering,
Yeah.
and obviously honoring the local deities. I something I do wherever I am. I did it in Spain. I've done it in the different countries I visit with my workshops or retreats, or if I'm just visiting as a tourist, I always honor the local spirits, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be there and to connect with the land, which is so important for me. And the
Oh,
water, obviously.
oh, the waters, yes. Well, it's important to me too. I always take some time to connect with the local spirits, deities, ancestors, and it is like an awakening. And when you have the opportunity, which thank you for the work that you do, because when you have the opportunity to remind people, sometimes all it takes is that little reminder to connect you to your ancestors, your line,
Yeah,
connect you to the land, which is all the same thing.
I know. And it's funny because I'm Iberian, right? And I'm an Iberian priestess in Scotland. But then after I moved here, I found out that I have Scottish in my DNA exactly from their area where I am now. And
Yeah.
I was like, it just blew my mind because I do have a very complex DNA because I have a lot of Scandinavian, I got Siberian, I Egyptian, a lot of Mediterranean, obviously Germanic, I have like, I'm Iberian. I got lots of bloods in me. I
Yes.
also have Native American.
Yes. We have
Um,
similar DNA. I wonder if our ancestors were buddies.
I have a small percentage of Inuit.
Wow, okay.
Yes. But that I assume that happened, because I have a lot of Scandinavian, Greenlandic, Icelandic DNA. Um, so I assume, the Inuit comes from Greenland or those shores, and it has to do with the Vikings somehow. But I also got Polynesian, a small percentage of Polynesian as well.
Wow.
So I get, I always say to my students that as long as you have a drop of blood that connects you to the people and the land, you can do the ancestral work. You can do the work because you're connected. Even if you have a single drop of blood in you, it's part of your bones. That land is part of you. You are part of me because we are connected by the blood and bones of who we are. So it's no barrier to connection, it's no barrier.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that there's so many connections that we can make and honor. And it's so funny that you mentioned that you recently discovered things about your ancestry and it just so happened to be where you were. I have so many stories from my students, my friends. Recently, I found out that I am genetically tied to a few members of poor individuals that were killed during the St. Bryce's Day massacre. Well, I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't look at where they found these remains, but it turns out that I had visited that space.
Oh,
I visited that space and I was so profoundly struck with emotion and sadness and just I was exhausted. I was physically exhausted when I was there. And I was much younger. I was still practicing an earth center tradition, but I hadn't learned as much. And then come to find out the exact location. It's one of the Oxford universities, the UK, where this happened. And I just was taken aback. I mean, I think that that's incredible because these experiences are very real. The ties are very real
yes,
and they're powerful.
they are powerful. I think what makes me a good priestess, apart from, the gifts I might carry, or the things I might have learned, it has to do with my blood and it has to do with my bones and it has to do that because my blood is so rich, if we talk Harry Potter, I don't think I'm a filth blood, I'm rich blood because my blood is the key to so many people and cultures and places around the world. And I think that helps me to open up and be able to listen to the gods.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful way to put that. I think that in general, neo-pagan traditions are given kind of a bad rap because we take and we combine. It's like an amalgamation.
Yeah.
But I think that's so beautiful. It's
But
so
excuse
important.
me, if we look back, okay, everything is an amalgam.
Yes.
Everything. As soon as religious practices start to be a structure, okay, you have a foreigner coming, learning something, taking it to where they belong. They add their own stuff, you know. Nothing has a clean structure.
I,
Nothing is clean in that sense. The spirituality we have is an amalgam. The gods that we have are either an amalgam of a deity, a local spirits, a deity that arrived from abroad and kind of mixed with local spirits, or we worship a deity that actually is a diffusion of a bigger deity. So I'm sorry, nothing's clean.
I agree with that so much. And I think
And
we,
it's beautiful that it's not. And if you look at the Roman Empire, come on, how many people? I mean, we're talking like huge empire, peoples with different beliefs, and they had different cults. And the deities travel from Syria to Scotland. I have seen with my eyes, okay, a shrine to goddess Astarte in Scotland, okay? And I saw that one in Scotland, but then you go to Adrian Wall, you go to Carlisle, there's another one to Astarte. And there also some that were mislabeled in the museums around and it was Astarte, a shrine to Astarte. So if a goddess like, but obviously Astarte to me, she is one of the most important goddess of antiquity, if not the most important goddess of antiquity. But we have these deities that travel these distances, and when people says, "Oh, there is this giant goddess in the Appalachia," and it's like, "Excuse me, that's the Kailer. That's definitely the Kailer." And if she traveled from Iberia to Morocco, there's this funny tale that because she's a giant, she was jumping, obviously, in between the geography, jumping over the sea and islands, that she was this giant that used to literally just throw her breast over her shoulders to be able to jump more freely.
I can relate to that.
So if she's she's this giant goddess that literally just jumps in between one place to another. And don't try to tell me that she might not have traveled to America, because she did. She did, because she is a connection to the mountains that she created in Scotland, but also is a connection to the people that travel to the Appalachia, bringing their folklore, and obviously, even if not with the same name, because, all these saints at the end of the story, they're, older deities that people turn into saints to kind of continue worship them. But I'm pretty sure the giant woman in the Appalachia is Cailleach.
Oh, I think so. I think that there are so many connections there, especially with the Germanic people that emigrated here, and also before the horrible thing that my ancestors and some of my ancestors did to the indigenous people of these lands. Before that, some of the early settlers, like I have a lot of French ancestry. It's why I'm so subversive. But I have a French ancestors that were fur traders that had relationships with the indigenous people. They trapped together, they hunted together, they traveled together. And of course there was bad stuff too, but before there was organization and upheaval and civilization, there was a really real connection. And I like to think of some of the Appalachian legends and that sort of thing and the folklore. I like to think of that as a very new perspective of that joining of cultures, because
Yeah.
there's so many marked similarities and things to celebrate. And I love the Norse or the Danish aspect or the Germanic aspect of traveling and asking the local indigenous people to introduce them to the land spirits, because that is something that was written about. It's something that supposedly was done in a lot of Germanic traditions. And I like to think that that happened and that it wasn't romanticized.
Oh, well, then they turn to the people of Lapland and see what they did to them.
Yeah.
People don't realize that the very few indigenous people that we had in Europe were severe punished by authorities, by governments, and not obviously not only in the north of Europe, but if you look at the continent, at the Asian continent, in China, they're still punish indigenous tribes in China because they are different. In Japan, they also punish their indigenous people for years and years and years until there was actually law to say, no, we need to protect them. It's people talks about slavery
Oh, yes. Yes.
in
That was
Iceland.
the servitude, indentured servitude was, of course, different too. But then there was also absolutely the Norse people and the many different cultures.
Yeah,
across-
but in Iceland, I know because I've traveled to Iceland with my teachings. I'm actually traveling to Iceland in March again, and I met people that told me, my grandparents were slaves.
I mean, of course, there's always going to be that dark underbelly of history, things that hopefully now that we know better, we can do better. I'm living in kind of a tumultuous time in the United States here, but I'm hoping
Yes.
that good will prevail, so we'll just have to see.
I think we all are experiencing tumultuous times
Yes,
everywhere in the world right now.
yes,
Is
absolutely.
chaos.
And it,
And
it does.
that's why the Ancestral Pathways conference this year, the theme is the works of the dark.
Wow, I was going to ask you about that because I'm so excited about it. So it's the Ancestral Pathways Conference. Is that a virtual conference?
It's a virtual conference I run every year, and I'm very lucky to have some amazing speakers every year. I have to say, I'm like, it takes my breath away sometimes, when I read the proposals and I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I can't believe I'm actually hosting these. And this year, because of everything that was going on, I thought, yeah, the works of the dark. So let's kind of take the mask off the dark. If how do we explore darkness? And also, was it all really that dark? I want to kind of also bring the balance, because also we find stories that are like extremely dark because of it was propaganda, and the reality was not that dark, and they only use fear to make something really dark and hurt people. So the theme of this year, I want to explore anything to do with animistic practices, magical practices that were labeled as dark in the past, maybe, or deities that were labeled as dark. I want to kind of bring light into some darkness, but also bring like the story of some dark practices, like for example, cursing in antiquity. I mean, it was a real thing, and it was like very hardcore, you know. They were not fluffy. We are fluffy.
No, no.
Ancestors in antiquity were not fluffy at all. Our ancestors were not fluffy.
No.
And when you see some of modern practices, people try and say, "Oh no, I follow Roman tradition or this," and then I refuse to make a meat offering, or I refuse to have meat on the altar or that. And it's like, so how can you try to revive an ancient practice and not offer your goddess a fillet of beef if she liked it? Like when I honor Sekhmet, or I want to honor her, I literally go to the butchers. I mean, we don't need to kill anything now. We can just go and buy things. But I go to the butchers and I buy a huge liver, and that's my offering for her. I have the liver in my altar for her. Like, here you are, a bleeding liver for you because you're my goddess. If I'm her priestess, I want to give my goddess something like she likes. And
Yes.
she's a lion. So I
Yes.
give her a liver. And so,
It's funny that you just brought her up because that she has been circling topics of conversation with myself and my friends and my students recently. It feels very much like many of us are being called by her recently. That's a
yes,
wonderful offering for her.
yeah, she loves the liver.
Yeah, that's good to know. I'm gonna try that one. I
Yeah, but
appreciate
we get so many people wanted to dedicate themselves to ancient gods, but they put so many filters because they don't want to go that deep. They don't want to really, they're happy in the surface, but you cannot worship a deity if you just want a finger of that deity. You need to worship the whole. And the whole means diving into ancient practices and accepting that your deity is not that it has a dark side to it, but it has an ancient side to it. And in antiquity, those deities received sacrifices or offerings. And if you can adapt those offerings, but I still give her what she likes, you do it if you really want to worship that deity.
Yes, yes, I think that That's a good lesson. About the Ancestral Pathways Conference, when is it? It's coming up, right?
So
In Scotland?
the deadline is coming up. The
Okay.
Ancestral Pathways Conference, we celebrated in Shawin, so it's literally the 31st of October, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd of November. So the deadline, I'm closing the deadline for proposals like next week.
Oh, okay.
And we have a good mix of pre-recording conferences that you can just watch when you want. But also we have a live on Zoom day on the 1st of November where we will have some of the speakers sharing live. So yeah, I'm very excited about the conferences this year. I haven't decided yet my topic for the conference.
I was going to ask, but I'm sure it'll be revealed soon, right?
Um, I don't know yet because I normally wait to see what's been offered. And
Yeah.
then I want to do something different so it's not boring for people to have the same thing. But yeah, I'm very excited about that conference because as the head of the Covenant of the Waters, I share both in Spanish and English as well. And I'm organizing the Waters Symposium in Spanish this year again to bring together all those Spanish speakers that are passionate about water or work with water with their, within their practices and share in Spanish because there are very few events in Spanish. So I'm organizing the Water Symposium again in Spanish for the summer. I'm organizing also a conclave hecatiano. So for people that worship Hekate, I'm also organizing this conclave for Spanish people, speaking people that wish to share a day of a couple of days of practices and talks and things in Spanish.
Yes, I'm looking at, I was looking at all of your websites and, well, not all yours, but all of the things that you've been affiliated with and the things that you've started and contributed to. And the Covenant of the Waters, it's very interesting to me. I have always been drawn to natural springs, just kind of being, I guess, a shamanistic practitioner myself. I haven't really labeled myself that, but I do have Native American ancestry and Germanic ancestry, and I can trace my recent ancestry back to British traditional practitioners. People would probably be upset about that, but I can prove it if you want. I just don't call myself that. I'm
Yeah.
learning. I'm just a perpetual scholar. But I think the Covenant of the Waters is so beautiful because just like bones connect us as well,
Yeah.
I believe, of course, water does too.
Yeah. And it's absolutely beautiful to see, you know, because my whole purpose with the training, with the priesthood of the waters, the sea priestess, I call it the sea priestess, but it's sea priesthood. It's literally just all about waters in general. It's beautiful because the whole point is to try by the end of each spiral is to give people water glasses they can put on and look at the world through the consciousness of water and look at themselves through the consciousness of water and look at their neighbor with those water glasses. And literally, it changes the way you see the world. And also every exercise, because there are assignments every month, and we meet on Zoom and talk about different water practices and everything. The assignments involve research because I want people to do the research to learn how everyone was connected with water. That's why it's important to do research so you can actually see really that connection all over the planet. We analyze works of art that have water to try to read the water in the work of arts, and the different exercise, everything has a why we do them, why. And by the end of it, you literally gain water consciousness. And once you enter water consciousness, there are very few barriers you cannot
Yeah.
touch.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm so interested in all of your projects and everything that you do. So the goddess community in Scotland as well, there's a Substack, and
Yes.
and other thing. Yeah, what do you do with them?
Well, the Substack is just to share. It's like our newsletter. So everything that, these, when we meet, we do rituals. I put the information there for the people to be able to read and follow. What I'm trying to do with the Goddess Community Scotland, what we're trying to do as a team is, because the idea was to open a temple, but,
Mm.
you know, it's super difficult to source money for things and it's super expensive. So I don't know if we ever have the temple. But what I'm doing now is I'm putting money together. I buy books and I'm trying to do a pagan library. So
Oh,
I'm putting pagans together, pagan books together. I accept donations, but I also buy books with the donations for the Ancestral Pathways Conference. And the idea was to donate the books to a public library, but then I was told, you know what, they're not going to put all the books out.
yes, yes.
They're going to leave them in a box, and people is not going to be able to really see them because they're funny books. So then say, okay, so I put books together. Let's try to have a space around to just do the library and have meetings every month for people to be able to come and borrow books. So I'm working towards that. I'm working towards creating this pagan library for local pagans. And obviously everything costs. I got a shed. I put it in my back garden. I was working on it to make it safe for books so I could meet with pagans in the back of my garden. And a recent storm we had destroyed my shed.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was just glad the books weren't there yet.
Yes, yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know that you're going to find the perfect solution because I think that is such important work. Thank you for doing that for your community, for
You
our
know, a
community.
lot of local pagans have books. Others don't have so many books because books are expensive as well. So I'm actually very grateful to my publishers, to Moon Books, because they do send me regular titles that relate to the goddess. So they have sent quite a few titles and also I have some authors in the past that have actually sent me a copy of their books to put it, in the shelves for the library. So authors out there, publishers, Llewellyn,
Yeah.
other publishers, Huesera books. If you can donate a title that you might think is relevant for paganism and just help us donate a book for this
Yes.
project.
Yes, I am so grateful to meet all of these wonderful people because I just was given I had a wonderful email interaction with Moon Books Publishing, and there really is just a catalog of such amazing authors. I'm so excited to learn more. Of course, I'm familiar with Llewellyn and a lot of the other publishing houses, and Moon Books just seems so wonderful and so.
It's sad because I learned that actually Moonbook's distribution in the States is actually terrible. And
There's
I
not a
didn't
lot, so I wasn't very aware, but I do a lot of workshops. So I'm
okay.
going to everywhere I do workshops, I'm going to suggest that they reach out to Moon Books now because I think that there are some wonderful titles. Of course, there's wonderful titles and wonderful authors and voices that need to be heard.
Yeah, that's why I was very honored when my I'm going to be presenting in Sacred Space this year, and I was very honored that my work was chosen among so many. I'm very honored. I'm very happy that I'm going to be able to bring my book, Sacred Bones, Magic Bones, but also I'm going to be talking about my one of my forthcoming books about ritual tattoo.
That is
So
a wonderful
it's
topic. Yeah.
yeah, I'm almost there. I'm working with an artist, with the illustrations right just now. But I'm very grateful that I'm going to be able to introduce my work with ritual tattoo as a shamaness. and be able to introduce my forthcoming book, when it's here. And I actually this year I have another book coming out. I think it's December. I think it's December about wounded goddesses, how to work with the shadow of the wound that some goddess carry in them. I thought it was very important to highlight that both women, but also goddess suffered, and those goddesses overcome their wounds and became stronger. And so it's a wonderful book, an anthology with different authors sharing about these feminine wounds that we carry as women, but also as goddesses. So
Yeah.
yeah, I got more things to bring into this world little by little.
I'm not surprised that you were selected for the Sacred Space Conference. A very good friend of mine is also presenting there. I'm so excited because I will be there. I'll be there to support her and, of course, see some of my wonderful friends I've met over the years. And I've always wanted to attend this conference. It just never worked with my schedule. So this year I made sure to move things around
Nice.
this conference. So I'm very excited to attend yours and others as I'm able.
So
Uh,
I
yeah.
I will be sharing, sorry, I will be sharing this workshop talk about ritual tattoo, but I'm going to be sharing a very special ritual from the Path of the Bones to work with the wounds of the womb, and also to work with is my frog medicine circle, to work also with the spirits of those children that maybe never made it into this world, and to work with the moms and the children and these ones. So it's going to be awful deep, but it's beautiful as well.
That sounds beautiful. That's so I'm excited. Oh my gosh, absolutely incredible work. And I can't thank you enough for this interview and for your
Oh,
book and everything that you've given us.
thank
Um,
you so much for having me. I do, being neurodivergent as I am, I do struggle a lot um to get myself out. I feel better off behind my pages or behind the screens, and but it's important to share, and because you don't know who might be listening, and you never know when something you say might help someone and help them a little bit. It is important to share.
You do such a wonderful job with sharing your true and authentic self, and I know that I know that this interview will help someone, and I'm grateful for it. I'm so glad that you were able to come on today.
I'm so grateful for you hosting me.
Absolutely. Ness, thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful winter. And I cannot wait to see you at the Sacred Space
I
Conference.
know. I can't wait either. Thank you
Thank,
so much for having me.
thank you.